Fight Commentary Breakdown special episode of Fight Commentary Chats. We got Jason. He's done a lot of Taekwondo. He wanted to tell me more about his training and some of the stuff we all hear about and want to talk about the Taekwondo world. So, Jason, welcome.
Hi, how you doing?
So, tell me about how you stumbled on Taekwondo back in the day.
I had always wanted to be in, martial arts for some time. Kind of, got interested, watching like Bruce Lee and stuff, and never had the chance really until I was in fourth grade, and I found out that they had like a little after school like Taekwondo class that was being taught at one of the elementaries that I was at. And my homeroom teacher just so happened to be one of the sub-nims that was at the school. So basically, I asked my parents, and I got enrolled within a couple of weeks of me being at that school, and that was pretty much the start of me being in martial arts.
I see. And was the instruction fun? Did it help you kind of learn some stuff? Tell me about those first few years, so to speak.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would say that my instruction was maybe a little bit different compared to what some other people, especially for WT style Taekwondo, would have received. Because my instructor was a little bit more old school, and he was really much more power era focused. He focused on using hands more.
Mhm.
A lot of people in Taekwondo, I was because when I was coming into Taekwondo, that was around 2008 or 2009. And that was around the time when the hands down style was really becoming like the thing. And No matter what people were doing in competition, my instructor was always telling us like, hey, use your hands, use your strikes, move in, get close, use your hands to actually push the opponent back because at that time too, depending on the judges and how hard you actually hit the person, they sometimes would count punches as a point.
Mm.
But it was kind of rare, and so it wasn't really something that a lot of people ended up spending their time on. But I found it good that he still instilled that instruction in us because it made us a lot more. How would I put it? It was a lot more evident that we were more rounded compared to other people who practice Taekwondo. But otherwise, the instruction that we got was fairly similar to what most of the people receive. Your standard pumse as we call it. It's basically the same thing as kata. We have our self defense techniques that we learn, which is basically two people standing, one person is attacking, one's defending, and it kind of gives you. I would say that a lot of people say that those things don't um, they don't give you a good sense of actual self-defense because it's not legitimate fighting. But I think the goal of those self-defense techniques are much more situational, and uh, outside of situational, it's also meant to be sort of a inspirational type of thing. So being able to know that you have a technique that works in one instance, but you can apply it to another scenario. So, yeah, all in all, I think I received a pretty good education when I was doing Taekwondo.
I see. Yeah. And if you remember the video I made with Sensei Seth, I basically agree with you about the compliance drills, as they call it. It's definitely it. I love the word you use, like inspiration, right? It's just spelling out a word, so to speak. I
Yeah.
like to use that. I guess that's a Kempo analogy of using different alphabet letters to spell out a word.
Hmm.
And in a real life situation, you might not be able to spell out that word, but having a few more letters, maybe you can spell out a different word. I'm being very, very using an analogy, but I
Yeah.
like to give that because obviously you're not going to pull off that exact move you practice, but at least now your body has some muscle memories to string together maybe one or two more moves than you would have naturally done.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's cool. Did you do a lot of competitions?
So I didn't go to competition a whole lot. I see, and it's funny because I think competition for me was a very love hate relationship because I'm a larger guy, I'll be honest. And especially when I was a kid, I was way chubbier, you know.
Mm.
And it was me basically trying to spar with kids who were smaller than me, so they were quicker. They could get in more, and it was easier for people to score points. So, of course, you know, me being the bigger, slower guy, it really the rule set really just kind of advantage. It's an advantage to slimmer, lankier fighters. Um, but I did go to a couple local competitions that we had. There was a school, I don't remember the name of it. It's an ATA based school in Lakewood or Tacoma. They hosted a small one. They just invited some schools around the area, and then I went to the Governor's Cup, which is the big one that we have here in Washington. And people from all across the PNW actually go there. So people from California drive up, Oregon. Sometimes we even get some schools from Canada. They drive
Mm.
down, and it's really really neat to see all of these people come out. And I went, I went and competed a couple times, but the one thing I never really liked about it is that it's very much a participation trophy type of tournament. So no matter what you do, you're always going to walk away with something. Um, and it's weird because if even so, most of the time, what they do in the Governor's Cup is they'll try their best to break it off into sections of four competitors,
Mm.
and then they'll bracket the competitors. And so whoever is in last place out of the four competitors will still receive a third medal trophy, and then third will receive a third medal trophy. So
Oh.
it's very like participation trophy.
Yeah.
And so that was one thing I didn't like. Um, but the most recent time that I actually competed was in 2019. I had we had just gotten back to Washington because we were in Ohio for one of my dad's duty stations, and
Hmm.
I came back and the Governor's Cup was coming up, and uh, I was kind of thinking about it. I kind of wanted to get back into martial arts, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay with Taekwondo. So I kind of used the Governor's Cup kind of as a measure for like what I wanted.
Hmm.
And it really it really shaped how I I like felt towards sport taekwondo from there on, because when I went, for my age, my size, and my belt rank, advanced brown, um, there wasn't anybody that I could compete with.
Oh.
So they basically stuck me with people who were of similar belt level, but I was fighting against a guy who basically I had like 100 pounds on. So
Wow.
this dude was just small. Like when I came back to Washington, I was around 230 or 240. And this kid was probably like 160 pounds soaking wet.
Oof.
And I was like, okay, this might be a good chance for me, but I'm not sure that this is going to work the way that I hope it will. And that was definitely the case, because the entire time he was running circles around me, and like I was talking about earlier, those smaller fighters, they're quick and it's very easy for them to get in and out, and with a point-based system like the way taekwondo is, there's not much you could do. So from there it was just all right, I'm not going to be practicing in this. So
Yeah.
um
As you were talking about the Washington State Governor Cup, I actually was looking up some of the stuff, right? And
mhm.
so you have to provide your own electronic chess pad and your own equipment, basically?
So I think because I didn't get that far, yeah, into taekwondo, because I think only black belts use that. Um,
Oh.
and I think it's only adult black belts that
Okay.
use it. If you're under 18, they just use regular hogu, and they do scoring by judge sight.
Oh, I see it. That makes sense. That makes sense.
So yeah.
I see. I see. Yeah. I'm just looking at this because, I'm learning all these cool words. Like, I didn't know what that gyorugi or whatever means sparring.
Oh
Gyorugi.
yeah.
I guess so. Now I learned a new word. I can, because a lot of people who don't really do martial arts, they love to memorize the terms and the rules and try to use it
Hmm.
on you. And I
Yeah,
know I have audience like that, but I can't
yeah.
stop them. So I just have to learn the vocab too. So I learned a new word too.
Oh
So,
yeah,
anyways, I totally went on a tangent. But so, I mean, yeah, the whole time when you're telling me about the weight discrepancy, I can imagine that it just Taekwondo was just the wrong sport for you to compete in because you can tank those shots in real life, right? So like in
yeah.
real life, oh, okay, you hit me. Okay. They're gonna just give up after like 20 hits, not doing damage to you. But that's not how it
Exactly,
works in a point-based system.
exactly.
Wow. And if you don't mind me asking, because you were on the chubbier side when you were younger, did you ever have to face like bullies, for lack of a better word, in school?
Yeah, I did have a few bullies. It wasn't like a crazy like sense of bullying, but it was more like, a little teasing here and there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the only time I've had to like really fight bullies was, I mean, let's see, the first time I had gotten into an altercation was I think I was like 7. Some kid, I think his name was Justin. He tackled me and was trying to beat me up. I guess I had said something that he didn't like. And I mean, back then when I was when I was a really small kid, I was very talkative. And my parents said that the doctors were alluding to the fact that they thought I had ADHD.
Mm.
So it made sense as to why I was always, very talkative, outbursty, just said what was on my mind. I didn't have a sense of like being able to meter myself. And it definitely took some learning to get used to that because I never actually went in for a full diagnosis. My parents never wanted me to, just because the way teachers treat you, and then you're on medication, and some people say the medication is terrible, but I'm kind of going off topic. Um, but yeah, so that was my first altercation, and I didn't really know how to fight back then, so I just basically covered up. And uh, the last time that I had to deal with a bully was in, I think it was 7th or 8th grade. This kid, his name was Kaiden, and uh, I thought that we were cool. We were kind of acquaintances, never really like good friends, but I thought we were cool. And sometimes when you're in school and the guys are like, "Hey, what's up, dude?" and they throw some fake little jabs at you, but it's not really meant to like hurt you. It's just like playful. I did that to him one day in the hallway, and next thing I knew on Facebook, I had him just making like all these like accusations against me about trying to like fight him and how I wouldn't
Oof.
fight him. And I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? And he's all like, yeah, you're a sissy, you won't fight me.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, dude, I'm not afraid to fight you, but I'm just trying to figure out why it is that you want to fight me. So at this point, I was like, I mean, if you want to fight, let's fight. So we scheduled it right before school in the back of the school.
Wow.
um he came out, one of his friends came out with the camera. um they recorded it, and it was
Wow.
basically it was a very silly exchange, actually. So it was, he threw a couple jabs, I threw a couple jabs, he threw a quick little low kick to the leg, which was fine by me. I threw a quick little low kick that missed, I think, and then we both went in for punches and we missed, and then he proceeded to get me in a clinch, and we basically he tried to throw me. And this is a situation where I think the self defense techniques that we were learning in Taekwondo sort of helped me,
Mm.
because when he tried to throw me, I knew how to use my feet to step out and balance, and then from there I was able to kind of step forward and use my leg to trip and basically land on top of him. But then somewhere on the ground, we ended up transitioning to where he got me into like a bulldog choke, and he proceeded to start punching the back of my head.
Oof.
And so, I mean, it was fall, so it was pretty cold outside, so I couldn't feel the punches. but the entire time I'm just sitting here and I'm like, I don't know how to get out of this. And that
Mm,
was one of the first situations where I felt like I wanted to work more on my ground game. And it was a long time before I ever even started, practicing, jujitsu or anything like that. Um, but yeah, I eventually I was trying to like pry out the arm, and he was just pretty strong. And at this point I was like, why are we even fighting? So I tapped out, and he gets up, let's go. He's like, yeah, that's what I effing thought. And he walks off, and everyone's laughing because they're like, oh, Kaiden whipped his butt. And I'm like, sure, I guess he whipped my butt, but it was just like it was a silly situation.
hmm.
But I never had to deal with like a bunch of like actual physical altercations because of like like me being fat or anything like that.
That's
So
good. That's good. Wow. Dude, thanks for sharing those. And I can tell you're a smart person because you got it out of the way in middle school, right? So, like,
yeah,
in high school, when people can really do damage, it's like, okay, not dealing with that.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
that's good. That's good. Okay, so let's talk. So, you had this sort of, you realize, all right, maybe Taekwondo's not for me. What did you do afterward? Did you try to talk to your coach? Did you sort of explore other martial arts? Because
Mhm.
obviously, like, with your body type, I could imagine you doing really well in, let's say, wrestling or potentially even in Muay Thai. You'd be scaring people in Muay Thai just moving forward. So tell me about your exploration since.
So for a while, after Taekwondo, I was pretty stagnant. Um, my mom and dad were kind of okay with sending me to another school if I had wanted to. But my biggest thing was we were moving around a lot more at that time, which is the reason why I didn't get my black belt in the first place was because one, we were getting ready to move, so it like my time crunch was like really really bad. And then the other thing was is that we never really had money like that anyways. And the big thing that I don't like about some schools, because not all Taekwondo schools are like this, but mine definitely was, and it's the amount of fees that they charge
Ooh.
for testing. And it's that when I was testing for my black belt, the black belt alone was $400. Um, and to add on to that, I had to test for my red and my advanced red belt, and those I think were like an extra. I think it was like 300 and 350.
Wow.
So I was really looking at a lot of money just to be able to get my black belt, and my parents didn't have it like that at the time. So it was, there were times when I didn't even go to class for a month because we just didn't have the money. So that was one of the biggest hindrances for me, and it was really disappointing too because on paper with everything that I knew, how well I was progressing. My instructors were like, "Hey, we think of you as a black belt. You just don't have it on your waist."
Yeah.
And so it was really kind of a bummer to deal with not being able to get it. um and it wasn't until later where I kind of thought about started learning more about Taekwondo, learning more about other martial arts, and really understanding that a black belt isn't really the end all be all. And I know a lot of people try to use it as a measure for you know how well you are in a certain martial art, but realistically it's just the beginning, because that's the point where you've really learned all of your basic and advanced techniques, and you're going into further education. Um, but I ended up doing a little bit of boxing. There was a boxing coach at one of the military bases that I was at, and we worked together for a little bit for I think 6 months. And then I think it was just last year, I actually signed up at a local gym for Muay Thai and Jiu Jitsu. So that has been a hell of a lot more fun, and it's also given me a little bit more. How would I put it? I guess a little bit more of a platform to really experience, different striking, and to changed the way that I utilize my Taekwondo movements. At one point, I had basically kind of stopped doing spinning kicks because the way that I saw it was wasted movement, and that unless you really have an opening, um, they're not really a move that you should be using. So I was sticking to your basics, side kicks, front kicks, roundhouses, um, maybe an inside crescent, but otherwise I was sticking to basics. And then through kind of working more in Muay Thai, dabbling more in looking into old school traditional Taekwondo and karate, I started seeing more benefits of utilizing, and then also just kind of looking at some of what like the professionals are doing, and it's really just kind of helped uh, grow my style as a fighter. So um, I don't know. I think the journey's been pretty interesting so far. So
Yeah, it's always so fascinating where we go from one system that, let's say, has issues with certain practicality, and then we go to another system that's more practical, and then we're quick to start tossing out a lot of stuff. But then as we start training in the other system, aka Muay Thai or kickboxing, whatever, we start realizing, hey, we can actually add in some of our training
yeah,
from the previous art. So I think everyone who transitioned from a more traditional art to a more combat based art has that journey where they're like, oh, it actually gives me an advantage if I can pull off this type of spin kick, or if I can
yeah,
attack from this weird angle. And I guess, yeah, I had a very similar experience because I tossed away a lot of the spin kicks I learned from Kung Fu. But
mhm,
after I did Capoeira, then when I went back into Muay Thai, I was pulling off more spin kicks. So I was
yeah,
like, you just needed a different context and different perspective, and then you're going to be able to give yourself an advantage. Like, all I'm sure, like, I actually really want to take Taekwondo lessons because I know it'll help my sparring in the future. So
oh yeah.
it's kind of like that. You probably, as you started incorporating some more of your spin kicks, there were probably moments where some of your Muay Thai training partners were like, "Whoa, that was so cool."
Yeah. And it's funny too because um a big part of my journey was self-teaching. So when I wasn't in anything, or I wasn't, studying underneath somebody, it was me, looking at YouTube videos, looking at UFC fights, learning how to do certain things, trying to really understand other techniques from different martial arts. And it's kind of fascinating how you can really just utilize so many techniques from different places. Because like a big thing that I do is uh, I use a modified long guard in Muay Thai sometimes, but instead of just using it as a long guard, I use it as a way to create Wing Chun trapping.
Ooh.
So because a big thing that was always plaguing me is that, especially at my current gym, is that all the guys who I spar with are smaller than me, so they're fast. And in order to deal with faster guys, what I started doing was using the long guard. It helps kind of force them to feel like they can try to strike over your guard, and so by them coming in, your hands already out here, and you can basically see like when they're coming in, and instead of having to react and dodge, you can actually have your hand already out there to where you can parry the hands from outside, so that way they're not coming into what I like to call your bubble, and you can then from there go in with your own counterattack. So it really opens up a lot of possibilities to to really get into different combinations and stuff. And some of the guys at the gym that I'm at, they've started to utilize it because they see how effective it's been in going against them, and they're like, hey, like this is actually really really good. So it's making me happy to see that they're enjoying utilizing that specific technique, because something like Wing Chun, most of the time people just throw it to the side. um, and realistically, I think all martial arts, regardless of um, what they are, I think at the core they are concepts and they are techniques, and we shouldn't think of these concepts and techniques is useless when you look at the whole art, because the whole art realistically is just it's just what it is within its own realm. A Taekwondo guy fights a Taekwondo guy, and it looks a certain way, versus a Muay Thai guy and a Muay Thai guy fighting, it looks a completely different way. However, if you have a Muay Thai guy using Taekwondo techniques, he's still doing Muay Thai. He's just using a technique, and he's using a principle from another martial art. So being able to do that really enables you more as a fighter, and it makes you more well-rounded. So
Yeah, exactly. And so you've also done some jujitsu too.
yes, yeah, I have.
And tell me
uh,
about that experience when you first started and how it is now.
so that's actually been a pretty fun experience so far. Although I will say it does take its toll on you, even just starting out, because within my first few months, I was injured twice. um Excuse me. I got injured on my knee one day. My One of my sparring partners, he was trying to pass guard, and I had my left leg framed against him. And when he tried to like basically slide around to get into side control, it was like the gi got caught on my leg, and it was pulling my leg while his body was pressed up against my knee,
Oof.
and it just torsioned my knee. So my ACL really took a hit there. And it's much better now. But then like 2 weeks after that, and I came back, I got injured again, my ankle on that left side. And that one was pretty weird because it was the same sparring partner. He went in for a single leg takedown. Um, and it was like my foot got glued to the mat. I don't know if it was like sticky from when it was mopped the night before or something, but it just, my foot wouldn't let go. So as he went to go tackle me, it was like my body was falling one way and my foot stayed in
Oof.
another way, and the ankle just decided to, it popped, and it was, yeah, it wasn't fun. So but outside of that, jujitsu's been fun. It takes a different kind of cardio to be able to grapple versus striking.
Yeah.
um and by no means is cardio and striking easy either, because I actually just got done with a fight last night. And I was gassed in the third round. And jiu-jitsu itself, it takes a lot out of you. um and I think the crazy thing about jiu-jitsu is um it's a lot more involved, because there's so much more that you're learning, and there's so many different layers when it comes to grappling, that it's not as simple as going into a kickboxing class and learning a 1-2, learning a roundhouse, putting them all together, versus this is your side control to mount, knee on belly, your different sweeps, and you're trying to take in all this information, but it's happening so fast that you have to really just take your time outside of class and break it down and study it in order to be able to really know all of it. Because the first thing that I think to jujitsu, even as a white belt, is to learning the terminology of the different sweeps and moves that you're doing, so that way you know what it is and you can identify it, so that way when you're asking questions and you're trying to understand how to up your game in a certain scenario, or just in general, you can actually go to your professor and say, hey, I'm having trouble with this specific submission in this specific position. So like, for instance, I was having trouble doing I think it was I was having trouble doing a Americana from uh, uh, half guard, and and it works, but uh, my professor was saying, realistically, even though you can do the Americana in half guard, it's much more efficient to just try to pass into full mount, and then use your body weight to keep them down while you move in for the Americana. And I was all like, okay, that makes a lot more sense. So from there, every single time I've tried to do an Americana, it's me going, okay, first I have to pass guard. If I can't pass guard, I'm not going for that move. And so it's really trying to understand your positions and knowing your terminology helps you a lot in learning when you're doing jujitsu.
Yeah, exactly. So you fighting in amateur MMA right now? Is that what's going on?
Kickboxing.
Oh, so your last night was a kickboxing fight.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, congrats that you're doing that now. Wow, went from Taekwondo point-based stuff to now you're doing actual like, hey, let's test our formidableness. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, so are you a heavyweight now when you fight?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right now I am about 258, 259, kind of
Hmm.
floating. But
I see.
I've leaned out considerably since then. So it's more muscle than anything, I'm proud to say. So it's just I am looking to cut down though. I'm thinking that I do want to move down to maybe 205.
Mm.
Because I'm pretty much at the upper limit of heavyweight, and it's fine. But the thing that I'm worried about is later on when I'm getting into more advanced matches. Most of the heavyweights are tall. They're
Oh.
6'1", 6'2", 6'5", and trying to fight guys as a smaller opponent, especially in a discipline like kickboxing, it's really hard to get in when all they have to do is just stick their leg out. Um, I mean, it's a lot more, it's a lot more nuanced than that because obviously, you have to deal with angles and, moving in and timing and, all of that stuff. But, realistically, when you look at it, most of the heavyweight, champions that are out there, what do they have all in common? They're tall. So being able to fight with people who are much more similar in height to me would definitely be a better advantage on my end. So I'm definitely looking to cut down.
Wow. Wow. So tell me about the first time you stepped into a kickboxing ring to do a competition. What was the feeling like?
So I will say that I've always had these butterflies going into any match, whether it was Taekwondo, um, or whether it was my first kickboxing match. I think there's I don't think anything is going to really get rid of those that anxiety and those butterflies that you get. You just have to kind of help change your own mentality about it. Try to find something that helps you kind of really you know comfort you, and then from there just hone in on it
Hmm.
because I guess I'll get back into that later. But my first one was back in, I think it was back in was it September? No, I think it might have been October. It might have been October. But it was a smokers fight. I just buddy of mine, they were hosting this fight night thing that they wanted to do. Um, and it was really neat because they had people from different disciplines fighting. So they had one Kyokushin fight just to kind of give awareness to Kyokushin. They had a couple boxing matches, a couple kickboxing matches. um so it was like I said, just a basic smokers fight. But I got to see my opponent, and he was roughly about the same size as me, maybe a little bit bigger in terms of girth, but relatively same size. And I'm like, okay, I'm feeling fairly good about this. But something told me that it wasn't going to be easy, even though it kind of was. And I can link you the video for
Yeah,
that.
please do.
But they so it's funny. So the kid, his corner has a professional fighter. She fights for LFA.
Mm.
Um, that's his sister-in-law, and his older brother was in his corner too. Um, and basically, they said that he was like, I think, 6 foot and 260 pounds, I think they said, and they said he had no experience. And when we got done, the guy said that he had like 4 years of karate, which was obviously they were lying, just to try to psych somebody out or something. I don't know, but just being up in that ring for the first time, it was definitely a change of like just being on a mat and having that spotlight down on you, and then the crowd. It was a very familiar feeling to when I was competing in Taekwondo, but just being in that ring was just a different change, and there was something about it that made it just feel different.
Yeah.
um and I could feel my blood pumping, going into the fight. And then it wasn't until maybe halfway through the first round, or maybe towards like the very end of the first round, is when I really felt like, okay, I can kind of calm down now. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. um and then you'll see in actually, I can, here, let me send it to you now.
Hmm. Hmm.
um but the second round was definitely much easier for me. It was definitely a rush, and you'll see even in that second round, I like the end of the first round, actually, I looked a little bit tired, and it was just because even though I wasn't going too crazy, it was the adrenaline dump that was really making me exhausted.
Mm.
Um, and even in my past fight that I had last night, it was, I think the adrenaline dump still got to me a little bit, but I felt a lot more relaxed than the first one.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
I see. So your plan, it looks like you're probably going to one day either go into MMA or maybe try to go for the professional in the kickboxing, right? Is that kind of what you want to do?
yeah, I've been really thinking about it as of lately, because martial arts had always been, a big thing for me, and whether or not I opened up a school, or go professional, that was, that was always something I wanted to do. And the more I thought about it recently, I've been thinking, going professional kickboxing would probably be much more, fun for me.
Hmm.
And if that doesn't pan out, like I said, I can always open up a school.
Yep.
There's nothing wrong with being a teacher, because someone had to teach me how to fight
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy actually teaching, because there's a certain level of pride that you get when you're showing somebody something, and it's when they finally get it and they execute it exactly the way you wanted. It's just nothing beats that feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think you have some very cool qualifications to teach because you also understand it from the traditional. So there's potential things you could take from Taekwondo, that the few things that are really helpful, and then put it into whatever training you give your students.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's really cool. So it's also when you were talking about jujitsu too, it's always, man, jujitsu is always the sport that gives people the injuries, man. Like I don't know who in jujitsu called it a gentle sport. It's not gentle at
Oh
all.
my God. Yeah, it's crazy because the guy who injured me, he had some issue where somebody slammed him or something,
Oof.
and he had an issue where his rib popped out or something.
Oh,
And he was just like, he said it comes and goes now, but he just kind of like works through it. And I'm like, you guys are somewhat kind of nuts, because that is a living injury,
yeah.
and you're still trying to train through it. Granted, I shouldn't be talking, because um I made the mistake on my first fight of not getting my hands wrapped. And
Mm,
it just I thought that the glove would have provided enough support, because I do hard sparring with just gloves, and it's normally fine. But that there was something in that fight happened. I must have just hit him right on the side of the head or something,
mm-hmm.
in a really hard spot, and it didn't sit well with my wrist. So I've been dealing with a slight on and off pain in my wrist. But um yeah, no, like, working through like, completely torn ACLs and,
Oof.
broken ribs and stuff, that, no, that's, it's crazy.
Yeah, sometimes it's like it's not that our bodies ignore pain, but we
Hmm.
know what really getting hurt is like versus a little bit of pain versus sensitivity, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes, like, due to capoeira, I have some, I don't know if it's wrist issues, but like
Hmm.
I have like a little bone. I don't know if you can see right. Let me see if you could. I have like a little
That little,
bone that just sticks out here.
huh?
And like I don't have it on my right side. That's why I'm like, okay, this is definitely from capoeira. There's just a bone here that just sticks out. It's so weird. From all the different handstands and all that shit in capoeira, forgive my
Oh
French.
yeah,
But so yeah, like for me, it's like, oh, it's just a little bit of wrist pain. But you never know. Like one day
yeah.
you get an X-ray, they're like, dude, how did you do that to yourself? It's like, I don't know. It just didn't feel like anything was broken, so I just ignored it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh
Yeah.
man.
Wow. So, you know, we wanted to talk about Taekwondo, which we did, but going full circle, man, obviously we know if they train for non-point sparring, Taekwondo would do better. Well, what else can Taekwondo do better to bring it back to the conversation at hand?
So, I think a lot of it comes down to the schools themselves because I know that right now the leader for competition is going to be the Olympics. Kids see Taekwondo in the Olympics, and they're in Taekwondo, so they're like, oh, I want to go to the Olympics. So, what does every school do? They teach Olympic style Taekwondo. It's funny because a lot of guys who are in the sphere of ITF style taekwondo, or if you get into other more obscure styles of Korean striking like Mukdu Kwan, or what's another one? I'm trying to think. It's on the tip of my tongue and I can't remember. But other styles like that, they're kind of sort of in the same boat, in my opinion, because when you look at their competition, right, what
Hmm.
does it look like? Sport karate. And they try to talk off of this high pedestal that it's much more realistic when everyone rags on sport karate the same way they rag on taekwondo. So realistically, it's everyone, and it's the way that the rule sets are going. Unfortunately, because I was having this conversation with a friend of mine who runs a karate dojo, and it's that while the sport side of it is great and it's very specific to the style, we also have to recognize that there's elements that we're not using that are in our style. For instance, in taekwondo we have elbows and we have knees, and it's very evident when you look into the taeguks. They're a set of pumse that are in our curriculum. I think Teguk, I think it's Teguk Chill and Teguk Yuk. Both have a situation where there's one where you grab where you're doing like a triangular formation and you're going to a jumping knee, but then it lands into a cross stance followed by a double uppercut. Um, Now, obviously, the cross stance double uppercut isn't going to necessarily be a very applicable and realistic, technique. But realistically, looking at the double triangle, right? This looks more like you're trying to come behind for your hands to do a clinch, right? So from here, jumping knee, which sounds perfectly reasonable. We do it all the time in Muay Thai. So that's one thing. Or like from the other takeout I was mentioning, there's one where you're standing in, I believe, a back stance, and you have one of your hands out like this, where it's like a open like knife hand, and you step forward into a front stance, and you complete it with an elbow. And that's basically like you're reaching out and you're grabbing someone's head and you're smashing it with the elbow. And so, there's more to Taekwondo when you look at the traditional side of it, but it's because of the rule sets and us trying to make it more palatable for people. Because the thing is that a lot of people in I guess in the general public, right? If you really look outside of people who are like fans of combat sports, who practice combat sports themselves. You know, most people who practice Muay Thai, who do boxing, they will stick their kids in boxing with no problem. They'll stick their kids in Muay Thai with no problem. And they'll tell their kids, hey, you know, you get a bloody nose, you get a broken hand, you know, maybe your knee's messed up. That's part of the life. And their kids grow up and they have no problem with it. But the general public who aren't into combat sports won't really understand that that's really just a part of the sport. So sometimes you get Karens who worry about their kids getting hurt. And so, in order to make it more palatable and in order to make things look less dangerous, and for people to boast, oh, this is totally safe for your kids, you know, they will alter the rule sets in order for people to be able to practice it with limited injury.
Yeah.
But that's also something that I think a lot of like styles are going to experience over time when you try to really focus on the sports side of things. Because we could take jujitsu for example, right? Um, you know, now I understand it's very easy to, you know, ruin the career of somebody in jujitsu when you're, you know, when you're doing certain techniques, right? Especially when you're talking about certain joint locks. Um, and you know, I may be speaking from a naive point of view because I'm still just a white belt. Um, but realistically, there is a certain taboo of even being a white belt and practicing with other white belts doing leg locks. So stuff like heel hooks, um, knee bars, even sometimes straight ankle locks. They're kind of um, looked down upon. And you know, at my gym, you know, they're kind of okay, but the professors just say as long as they're not a white belt, you know, you can do them. But some schools they won't even let you like think about them. Um, you know, in competition, you're not allowed to use heel hooks, knee bars, and straight ankle locks are allowed, but they get really finicky about the way it looks. That sometimes they might just say, "Hey, you know, it looks like you're doing a heel hook when you're not." And so it's it's really frustrating because that is a part of the art, and when you start to really dilute it and take away from what can be done, and you know, to be fair, they're even looking at removing it in you know, some of the higher levels too.
Mm.
And it's like, how can you remove something that's part of the art? And you know, it if it's, I think removing stuff that's part of the art, even though that they may lead to injury, I think it's something that we all should relatively understand that we signed up for, you know, because at the end of the day, it is a contact sport. It is a combat sport. And we try to distance the sports from the combat part of it. And realistically, they are so close to each other that to a degree, we sometimes lose sight of what the combat side of it is, and that's kind of going back to like traditional martial arts, right? Traditional martial arts, especially, you know, karate, taekwondo, I guess excluding styles like, you know, kyokushin, you know, they really suffer from this, you know, heavy sportification, and then you lose sight of what the old style was. So you know, taking away you know, techniques and modifying rules to where you can't do certain things is you know, it's really questionable in my book, because I was even talking actually to some guys in the Reddit page Discord for the Kukiwan Taekwondo, and I was asking about how like the rules were with leg checks, because um there's no knees allowed in, you know, taekwondo, and I was very aware of that. But a leg check is nothing more than just a block. It's no different than if you used your hand or your arm to block a kick or a punch. But specifically in the rule sets, it says that you're not allowed to block a kick with your knee. um and let me pull it up. He said, let's see. He said, where is it? I'm trying to find it. It was right here in the. Hmm.
It's funny because I used to sometimes prowl different subreddits for the different martial arts, but eventually I stopped going on them because there's just so much arguing.
Yeah, it's it's funny because oh, here it is. Because people get all up in arms about the way that things are supposed to be done. But also if you learn how to hide certain things, you can get away with it. So like for instance, like a leg check, for instance, you can hide a leg check if you throw up the leg check and follow it up with the same leg doing something like a teep. So it kind of looks like you were trying to fluidly just go into a teep, but realistically you're trying to hide the leg check. And if the judges or the referee doesn't see it, then they can't call you on it. Um, but here, so this guy pulled out a section of the rules, and he said, prohibited acts. The following acts shall be classified as prohibited acts, and gamjan shall be declared: lifting the leg to block and or kicking the opponent's leg to impede the opponent's kicking attack, or lifting a leg or kicking in the air for more than 3 seconds to impede opponent's potential attacking movements, or kick was aiming to below the waist, slash kicking below the waist. Now, kicking below the waist, we all know, whatever, it's a no go. But stuff like kicking the opponent's leg to impede the kick, that is definitely 100% a skill,
Yeah,
because it's not every single time that someone throws a kick that you have the potential of actually, kicking it.
yeah,
I
yeah,
can count on my fingers the amount of times that I've been in some hard sparring and someone throws a kick and I've been able to actually kick it out of the way. And that's been
yeah,
like 3 times, you
yeah,
know. Um, lifting the leg to block the kick, that's it's part of martial arts.
yeah,
If you don't see it as a valuable skill, you know, I don't know what to tell you,
yeah,
because it's definitely making us look silly, because people are like, oh yeah, why don't they leg check, and it's like, well, we're not allowed to, and they're like, oh, that's not realistic. So that was a big part of what I started like focusing on early on when I started to kind of dabble into other martial arts. Was I would look at the way some other martial arts did, blocking and parrying, so that way I would be able to better protect myself, because that's a big part of martial arts, is being able to guard.
yeah,
If you can't
yeah,
protect yourself, then what you shouldn't even you know you shouldn't even be able to be trying to throw strikes at somebody.
yeah.
So it's I think defense is one of the most important things that you could be learning, and to explicitly prohibit the way that you can defend yourself is just absurd to me.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. And there is a potential, at least one of my coaches who trained in Taekwondo too, just he said it this way. He was like, yeah, the thing is, unfortunately, if you start incorporating more stuff that normally isn't taught, then it's gonna just look like Muay Thai or it's gonna look like kickboxing. So to sort of differentiate yourself, they almost have to take out stuff that would be useful. But what I would almost say to that is yes and no, because you all know people who have Taekwondo foundations who do Muay Thai look a little different, just like people who do Kung Fu who do Muay Thai look a little different, right?
Yep.
People who do Wing Chun who do kickboxing, maybe they're going to take boxing lessons and Muay Thai lessons, but there's still a Wing Chun flair to their strike. So, but then it goes back to what you're saying about sort of the capitalism and the marketing towards a lot of Karens who have kids, you have to make it obvious what they're getting into, right? If it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
you're gonna learn how to fight, you're gonna have a little flair that's different from this person after 5 years.
Hmm.
Some of these soccer moms were like, I don't want to send my kid to this. This looks like it's too much commitment. It looks like my kid might lose interest in a month, So
Yeah. Yeah.
part of the paying for the belt tests and part of the fancy uniforms and everything is it's
Yep.
almost like building a little cult, right? That's the
Yes.
honest truth about a lot of like martial arts, part of the cringe is that it gets very easily becomes a cult type of thing. So
Well, to kind of build off of that, Taekwondo and other Korean martial arts to some degree is a cult. Um, and it's kind of sad to say it, but it really is because most people who have been in Taekwondo or almost any other Korean, martial art that has striking involved, to some degree, will acknowledge that Taekwondo is not its own thing. There's a certain level of its own flair that they try to have, and it's mostly evident in the way that you see the like the Pumse, but when you really look into the history and you look into each of the styles and the lineages, they're all shitty off. Excuse my language. They're
yeah,
all bad offshoots of karate.
yeah, yeah. Basically, that's the
Shotokan,
truth.
Shido Ryu,
Yeah,
it's all karate.
yeah,
Um, you know, uh, and it's sad because even the forms, they're all made in a way where, so like the little patterns that you see on the Korean flag, that is like the reason why Taekwondo moves in certain directions in their forms is because they're matching the flag. It's all Korean nationalism. Um,
mm,
and it's sad because Korea doesn't really like to admit that what they're practicing is essentially karate. And I think that's the reason why they've tried to distance themselves so much from ITF and so much away from a sport karate, and especially with the rule sets that they've made, because they want it to look different. And by allowing it to basically perform the same way as sport karate would, people would eventually look and go, I don't see the difference. And it's kind of sad, but it's true, you know. And you get into other styles like Mukdu Kwan, Harangdo. You got I can't remember. I can't remember. It's on the tip of my tongue, but there's another Korean martial art, and when you really look at them, they're they're it's all Japanese arts,
yeah, yeah.
they so it's I don't know. It's definitely in its own way kind of cultish. Um and I've even heard of some instructors who basically, especially if they're Korean, they will kick you out of their school for practicing something else.
No, I can
So,
imagine that. Yeah, man. Yeah, and it's kind of funny because you're doing jujitsu too, and unfortunately, the type of cringe you'll see in jujitsu too, it's just a different type of cringe. Like,
oh yeah.
I've the differences between the lineages, the different schools and stuff. There's so much just cringe, but
Oh yeah.
it's all because the thing is, I started playing chess recently, right?
Hmm.
And I realized the same type of cringe you get in martial arts, you get in chess. And I'm trying to break down, I'm like, why? And then I realized it's because feeling like we're smart and
Hmm.
feeling like we can defend ourselves are very fundamental things in everyone's ego, right?
Hmm.
So when you tie that to anything that's skill building and competition, it just inevitably creates cringe because
Yeah.
like I just started playing chess because I found it fun. Like I am not competitive about it, but man, the type of BS that people would tell me, like people who obviously don't know anything about chess would try to like
Yeah.
pretend they know. I'm like, wow, it's like I never left the martial arts world. It's like the same exact type of stuff that we love to explore on the channel. It's like, and then I realized, oh, it's because everyone likes to think that they're smart and they not only want to feel they're smart, but they feel like they can learn things, right? That's
Oh
part of
yeah.
being a human. The issue is chess is not too easy to learn. It's easy to learn badly, like you can learn how
Oh
to
yeah.
play, but to learn how to actually play well, it's very hard. It's just like martial arts. Like you can learn how to punch, but to learn how to punch well is very hard.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like the same type of cringe. So anything, any institution that centers around a man's ability to defend himself or a human's ability to reason and
Hmm.
problem solve, it's gonna have cringe.
Oh yeah, yep. It's it's yeah, I think anything really can have cringe. It's like because outside of martial arts, I'm a big car guy, and it's crazy to see the things that people do with their cars, and it's like, okay, what was the point of that when you could have just spent the extra money and did this? um or like someone spreading misinformation about how to do a certain job on your car, and some people don't understand that maybe it's just specific to that car, or whatever. So like people are speaking from their own experiences or their own inexperiences, and then it just melds down into this weird level of cringe where it's all like, okay, but what is the absolute truth about this, and how do we actually see it? Because until then, it's just kind of a whole slew of just random information getting compiled, and it's not helpful.
Yeah, exactly. The funny analogy I like to give, and I guess I'll end off with this analogy, is that so I studied international chess, right, or whatever you
Mm-hmm.
call it nowadays. So there's this one viewer who he seemed like an open-minded dude. That's why I even asked him if he played chess. Now he plays Chinese chess, but that's very different than international chess, right? So he thought because he played Chinese chess, he understood international chess. So he started like trying to lecture me about international chess,
Uh-huh.
and everything he said, I called him out because I respected him. At least I initially respected him, and then I lost respect to him as he kept talking. But initially, I'm giving him very honest feedback. I'm like, absolutely not. You're wrong about this because, and then I'm like, isn't that the same analogy as like the kung fu guy who doesn't want to learn Muay Thai or whatever? It's like, yeah, well, everything derived from kung fu. Yeah, maybe international chess derived from Chinese chess, but it
Yeah.
doesn't mean international chess is any less. And I could argue it's better because it's a more modernized game that takes into account even more strategy and specialization. See, you see the analogy between that and like
Oh
a lot of
yeah.
traditional martial arts don't want to improve it. Like, well, but I did it my way. My system, derived this system. Therefore, our system's better. It's like no, there's the reason why things evolve, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think to some degree it's good to evolve. Obviously, especially when you're talking about in the sense of like traditions and traditional martial arts specifically, you don't want to lose sight of the martial art, but to be able to evolve in a way where, let's say we just changed rule sets and we started practicing our style differently. We don't have to do much, right? Because I think Taekwondo, if I'm speaking from my experience, is a great base. It's a solid base. I've been able to spar Muay Thai guys with almost no problem. The realistic side of it is there are a few bad habits I picked up because of Taekwondo, and there was a level of adjusting because I wasn't 100% used to the full contact. I mean, I kind of jumped right into it, and it was fairly easy for me compared to some other people I could imagine. But it's being able to adjust to the way that other people are doing their training and the way that other people actually fight and have their rule sets. I think would absolutely change the way that we can be seen, because we've done it before. You look at old school K1, you look at old school kickboxing, old school glory. There was a bunch of people who were into karate, into taekwondo, and they would just destroy the competition.
Yeah.
So it's its own thing.
Yeah, and even now, I mean, Quan Kicker, he's not really into this stuff anymore. He's more into action cinema. But Quan Kicker showed at least once in Thailand that he could pull off Taekwondo. And then we got our man Eddie Baena, who
Mm-hmm.
who just had an MMA fight last night, by the way. So I need to figure out how he did. But he's just Taekwondo, and now he's added Jiu-Jitsu. So he's
Yeah.
Taekwondo and Jiu-Jitsu, right? So of course in the UFC there's Jair Rodriguez, right? So there's
Mm-hmm.
always people that can make it work.
Oh yeah,
But
for
like you said,
sure.
it's they obviously modified their training, right? They didn't just go, okay, I'm gonna do Pumsa, I'm gonna I'm gonna do point sparring, right?
Right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and exactly, I love what you said, Jason. It's not to say take away all of that, do all
Mhm.
of that, but if you want to actually feel like you can actually fight, then you still have to really spar in a continuous way, not just in a point way.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, there. I think we all appreciate certain things about tradition. I'm a Christian, and I've been getting into thoughts about this, about like the liturgy, right, as they call it in the
Mhm.
church. Like, why do we need like the Latin and the Greek and like all the traditional songs versus you go to a mega church that's in a building that's like doesn't look like a church, and then you sing these modern Christian rock songs. Like, there's a difference. Some people
Yeah.
like that. Some people don't, and so like it's so funny. I'm drawing all these analogies, but this is
Uh,
something I think about a lot because obviously I did kung fu, I did karate, I did a lot of traditional martial arts, and then I
mhm.
wanted to toss them out, but then I realized no, there's a lot of cool stuff from them. You can find a lot of these parallels in different parts of life. I'm sure with cars it's the same, right, Jason?
Yeah.
Some people really appreciate the really old cars and stuff like. Some people want the really new fancy cars, but it's like there's a reason to appreciate all of that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I guess let's end off. Let's talk a little bit more about cars. So, how did you get into cars?
um, I've always just kind of been into cars. I've loved cars. Just see them in movies and see people driving fast. And I'm like, that's really cool. And it's kind of the same way. I got into martial arts. I grew up watching Bruce Lee, Jet Li, Jackie Chan. All the greats back then. Jean-Claude Van Damme. It's like eventually started getting more into the car scene, just kind of looking around and stuff. And then when I had actually came back to Washington in 2019, I found a job on base actually for Firestone, and yeah, they were looking for a maintenance tech, and then from there, I kind of progressed into my career for a few years. Went up. I was doing more advanced jobs, so was doing engine maintenances. So just more advanced stuff. Like water pumps and timing belts. Learning to do basic diagnostics. I can do brake suspension, all of that stuff.
Wow.
And that kind of progressed to me, working on my own car and, starting to modify my own car. So it's kind of like a little passion of mine. And, it's always fun when I get into my own car and, it's just something that I've kind of pieced together myself and, I can enjoy it and I can appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Sounds like my relationship with chess is kind of your relationship with cars.
Oh
That's really
yeah.
cool. Wow,
Right
that's
on.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I would encourage you, since you have this passion for cars, that might be a YouTube channel you start. Sometimes I
you know,
tell people, don't don't take your number one passion and start social media on it because it might burn you out, and you don't want your number one passion to get burned out, right? But take your
yeah.
number two passion. Like my number one passion was actually music, but
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't. I don't do too much with music because I'm like I want to keep that a passion. I don't want that to burn me out one day, right? So
Yeah.
I made my martial arts the thing that somehow made me money. Martial arts was my number two passion. Not to say it's something I don't care about. I really care about it, but I used to care about music way more. So
Oh
like
yeah.
if cars are your number two passion, then like start a YouTube channel on that. That might actually become your moneymaker, and then you have even more time then to kind of devote to martial arts.
Oh yeah, like I mean, I'll be honest, even working as a technician, it kind of burned me out quite a bit, and
Mm,
especially because I was working for such a big box, automotive shop. It
mm-hmm.
just, they want you to crank cars out and keep going, and then you got to work through your lunch, but then they complain when you don't take lunch,
Of
and
course.
some weeks were slow, and I mean because you don't get paid by the hour in most mechanic shops. You get paid what's called flat rate. So it's per job basically. So if like you did an alignment and let's say the alignment pays an hour and a half and you did it in 2 hours because it's a really messed up alignment, then you only get paid for the hour and a half. But if you can do it in half an hour, then you still get paid the hour and a half. So
Yeah.
there's opportunities to make money, but there's also opportunities to lose money. And then when it's slow, you don't make much. But what was neat about the company I worked for was they would guarantee you 30 hours when it was slow. So that was, that was a little bit, a little bit more, um, how would I put it, relieving. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I see. I see. Well, I think let's definitely do another talk in the future because, as we know, you're going to continue training, you're going to continue doing kickboxing. So maybe next time, let's say before a fight or after a fight, let's do another talk, and then we can
right
kind
on.
of because after every fight, I'm sure you're going to have a lot more to think about and talk about. So I
Oh
look forward
yeah,
to future conversations. And you have me on Instagram. You can just talk to me whenever. And
yeah, yeah.
if you ever want to play chess, you got a guy who plays chess.
Right on. Yeah, yeah. I haven't touched it in some months, but I could definitely play. Although my rating is a little low.
It's all good. I mean, I don't expect to get like I I I think what is it like to get above what is it 1,800 like 1,800 is expert level right or something like I don't remember all the different rankings
Yeah.
but like one of my friends that got me into chess was a really good chess player on chess.com.
Mhm.
He's just at 1,800, so I'm like I don't have to worry about anything at his level. He's only at 1,800. It's like okay, I'm not gonna compare upwards, man, because
Yeah.
like on the other hand though, funny story, sometimes you don't want to compare downwards either. I have a neighbor who's so slothful, and I love him to death, but he's very slothful. Like he's really lazy, and so lazy. One time, he wanted to poison some rats because there's some mice or something in his yard.
Oh yeah.
Got lazy, put the rat poison there, and just kind of like I don't know, just like sat on his couch. And then I was walking a dog, and the dog almost ate the rat poison. And that's why I call him out a
Oh
lot. That's why I don't like.
no.
He's a cool neighbor, but like I call him out because of that incident. Like, so he's that type of guy. But on chess.com, his rankings, his elo is like 1,300. I'm like, you
Oh
see, even
man.
slothful guys like this have redeeming factors.
Oh man.
Yeah. That's a funny story because it tells you, right? It's what martial arts helps you do, right? It teaches you not to judge too much, right? Like
Oh yeah.
people might have looked at you back and they'd be like, "Oh, he can't throw down," and then it's like they take one punch from you, one kick from you, it's like, "Oh, ouch!" Right? Or then you might look at a small dude, it's like, "Oh, that dude can't throw that, and that dude hits the hardest."
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I'm waiting on footage for this past fight. So if anything, once I get a hold of it, I'll send it over to you.
Yeah, please, thank you, man.
Right on, right on.
Awesome, dude. Well, everyone, this was Jason. We will definitely talk more. And Jason, whenever you can, if you do start uploading martial arts videos to your channel, just let me know, and I'll put a link and everything to your channel.
Okay, right on. Awesome.
Awesome, dude. Thank you so much, man. We'll talk
Yeah.
soon.
All right, thank you.
All right, bye bye. Everyone, there's
Bye.
fight commentary breakdowns.